often tell people that my company started out of rage and anger, which is completely true. I was in a situation where I traveled almost an hour to work. I lived in Philadelphia and I worked in Wilmington. So that commute was a bit intense. And then you add on to that trying to get my daughter to school, and it just did not work. We spent a ton of time trying to figure out, do we hire a nanny? Do we get morning help? Like, do we swap off? We tried about a million different solutions, and what ended up happening was that we found just a ton of people who were in the same situation. So that is where I started to research and discovered that student transportation represented this enormous market opportunity, and started to kind of dive into what solutions were out there, and how we could build something different and unique that would work. Yeah, no, I love this question because it really causes me to think. I started Shuttlebee in 2014. So I had been in the corporate world for almost 15 years at that point. So going from corporate to startup is a wild cultural change, right? So it's a big, big step. But I realized that I really wanted to be an entrepreneur even before that. We had an Airbnb property and it was brand new. It was this new and exciting thing. And, there wasn't a lot of rules in the beginning. I think we ended up being one of the first sets of super hosts. And that wasn't even a thing when they started. So, really trying to understand, how do you position your spot to be different? How do you attract more customers? How do you manage seasonality? So it was this part-time hustle that turned into this really rewarding experience, and I want to learn more. So that's actually how I got my feet wet. So this is an incredible question. I try and think about it every day because it's just so fascinating. We all know the statistics where female-led teams typically raise less than 2% of all venture capital, and that used to be a bad thing. And obviously I'd love to see more representation, but I read a fascinating article that really talked about how there's no blanket statements, right? But there tends to be trends that point to the fact that women entrepreneurs can be extremely capital efficient, operationally efficient, and do more with less. So I'd be curious to see if we didn't see more female founders who are now second and third time founders enter the ring, become more successful in fundraising, but that raise number doesn't necessarily go up to the stratosphere because they are doing more with less, just because that's how we were conditioned. That's what our experience drew out of us, and that's how we came to the playing field. So super curious to watch what happens, but with all the low code, no code, vibe coding solutions out there and just the easy access to information, I think the numbers may not tell the full story. So I'm curious to see what happens. Yeah, so it was a great week, and it would be easy to say a lot of things like the food. The food was amazing. Just being in a really great foodie city was fun. The happy hours, the multiple opportunities to get to know other founders and the team. But I think if I had to pick one moment, it would have been, we did this team building activity out on the University of North Carolina Charlotte's campus. And without giving away too much in case other potential founders see this opportunity, this game, all the founders had to work together to solve a problem. And we were outside in the woods in nature, and it was a physical problem. It wasn't like a brain teaser or trivia question. It was a legit, like, go solve this problem in 15 minutes. And we know the founder archetype can be a little heavy on leadership, so you never know how these things are going to go, right? And I wasn't sure what to expect, but the group that the RevTech team has piled together has built just this collaborative nature that this team of founders who'd never worked together before doing anything was able to knock out this challenge. We did it well. We laughed. We had fun with it, and no one cried. So I feel like that's success, myself included. But really, just seeing the depth of the experience of the founders, not just with what they've achieved and how they've achieved it, but like behind the scenes, how they work with others, how they troubleshoot, and how they pull together solutions for problems was super interesting. And I thought that was a fun experience. Yeah, I feel a little special. Sarah Garces Roselli is our chairperson. So I'm sure all the teams have rock star advisory groups, but especially for the objectives we've outlined, I mean, I couldn't have asked for a more tailored, experienced group of people. Whenever you bring people with different expertise together, like I'm a beekeeper, so I liken it to asking five beekeepers a question, you'll get 10 answers, right? You never really know how to sort responses and different people's feedbacks, but you had five experts who collaborated really well. I think sometimes what happens in these puzzles is you end up with Frankenstein at the end, where everybody kind of tinkers with the solution and over tinkers on the last person's collaborative answer. But the fact that we got all these folks in the virtual room, talking about the same problem, really able to hammer it out in a way that was collaborative and super effective, I couldn't have been more thrilled. And for me personally, it was really validating. There had been one challenge I had really been kicking around for quite some time, and I chose that as one of our objectives. And I got to see some really smart people go at this problem, for quite a while. So on one hand, it was validating. This is really hard, but it was also validating. It's so wonderful to have like the right experts in the room to help you work through it. Really gratifying as well. So thanks for asking.